Hello and welcome to Biogas TV. This is the number one live streaming biogas TV show in the world. I'm Paul Green. I run a biogas advisory business. I'm here with my colleagues Alexander McFarlane of RNG Connect and Drew Puchot of Equus Energy.
Hello, all.
You see all of our contact info in the chat. We now enter season 5 of Biogas TV, where we dedicate the month of June to an old but new use for biogas, that being fueling vehicles in a local fueling configuration. We're all highly familiar with the California LCFS, but this is different. California LCF market is full and prices are soft. Now with liquid diesel selling for close to $6 a gallon, or about $42 per MMBTU, RNG can be a cheaper approach. To date, the key gap in this RNG for vehicle fuel story has been powering trucks in a way that's competitive with diesel. Cummins has that fixed. Today we feature David King of Cummins. David is the North American on-highway product manager for natural and renewable gas engines. David, thanks for joining us today, and thanks for joining us to explain the Cummins offering for RNG fueled engines. With that, the floor is yours, David.
Hey, thank you. And thanks for having me, all of you, today. And I'm excited to have a chance to talk to you about Cummins and natural gas engines and renewable natural gas for the heavy duty truck market. So, Paul, you were asking earlier, I've been with Cummins now, 38 years this month. And so it's been a long ride, and it's a great one. And I've kind of lived through a lot of different things. Cummins, and I don't go back this far, but Cummins started back in 1919. So, we've been working to advance, technology and transportation for well over 100 years now. And, that's by working with the markets and our customers on what the market needs and wants. And so we started working with natural gas engines over 30 years ago. And, one of the first forays into natural gas for on-highway engines was our L10 gas product. And that was really kind of driven by California and transit bus market. And we've now evolved over all those years to a portfolio of products from our B6.7N to the L9N, the ISX12N, and now the X15N, which we introduced about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. And really that was defined by others really as a game changer for the heavy duty truck market. The L9N is really the backbone of transit for natural gas, transit buses, shuttle buses, as well as in refuse trucks. A lot of collection trucks and roll-off trucks with L9N. The 12-liter really built on that and developed a regional haul market for natural gas. And you'll see many trucks out on the road running that, whether bulk haul, regional haul, parcels. And the X15N came in and is really going to absorb that market for regional haul, line haul, and really has that capability because now the industry has an opportunity and with a product that can do 500 horsepower, 1850 foot-pounds of torque, up to that. And that's really what we needed for this market segment. So you think about, the various trucks on the road, the power and the torque needed, the performance needed for the gradability on the highway. And we really are bringing that to the market. And so you start coupling the capability of the product, and now with volatile fuel prices, from a diesel perspective, very high diesel prices today, as you talked about, Paul. But that's kind of the story, right? Diesel is always a premium to natural gas. And sometimes it's an extreme premium like we're seeing today, or maybe back during the Gulf or the start of the Ukraine war. And there are some times when it becomes extreme and other times when it's just a really good value for natural gas. So you start coupling that capability, the low cost of operation of natural gas engines, and then the decarbonization effort, the lower emissions, the lower NOx, lower particulate matter from an air quality perspective, and then the reduction in carbon from a well-to-wheel perspective that particularly renewable natural gas brings. So it really kind of brings all this together to say there's a lot more interest in natural gas for heavy-duty trucks than there used to be. And we kind of foresaw that coming, and that's why Cummins is developed the X15N to really capture that, what was a budding market with the 12-liter, and really grow that. And just an example of the demonstration of that it's capable to do the job that the industry really needs is last summer NACFE ran the Run on Less, where 3 of the trucks in that study were natural gas with X15N, hauling anywhere from 80 to 140,000 pounds. Those really heavy trucks getting more about 4.6 mile per gallon and up to almost 7 mile per gallon on more of a regional haul perspective. And so some real world results, being able to run up to 700 mile ranges with CNG, again, another need of the market. So we're really delivering what the market needs and demonstrating that natural gas is ready for prime time and really can do the job that the diesel trucks to do. So it's a mature, proven technology that we can then deploy at scale to reduce a fleet's operating cost while also reducing emissions overall and carbon footprint. So, lots of really great things going on, and the market's been ready for it, and it's we're starting to really see that uptick.
David, why not? We've got a question already here that arrived early. So, early CNG muni buses have higher maintenance due to running hotter. What advances have been made to accommodate the higher heat?
Yeah, so they run hotter in that that has to be taken care of in really the installation. So you do have high exhaust surface temperatures. So that's working with the OEMs to make sure that they're aware of what that radiant heat might look like from a coolant temperature, air temperatures in the engine. They're all, not really different than diesel, but they do have a higher radiant heat just because the exhaust manifold, exhaust temperatures, the surface temperatures are higher. So we've been working with the OEMs to make sure that they really understand that. So when they're doing their installation integration work, the 15-liter, we have some insulation on surfaces as we came into new applications with that to really kind of mitigate that. So I think that's probably addresses the questions you're talking about.
Okay. Thanks.
Great to have a question right out of the box, though. That's fantastic. One thing I'd say, Paul, is there are resources out there for fleets that are looking at that transition. There's different groups out there working, suppliers to the industry, in addition to Cummins, right, to help fleets make that transition, or at least to start the exploration. And the transport project's a great resource. You might know them as they used to be the NGVA, Natural Gas Vehicle Association. Now it's the Transport Project. Lots of great resources on where do I find fuel. So a fuel map locator, what are some of the resources I need for my shop or for, safety inspections and things like that. So, I really encourage fleets to do that. And that fuel infrastructure has been growing. There's over 1,600 natural gas fueling locations across U.S. and Canada. About half of those are capable of Class 7, 8 trucks, which is, that's where the fuel is really consumed at volume, which, I know part of this is about, takeoff and how do we look at that? And so, getting those fleets that are running a high volume of fuel really stand the most to gain because the biggest impact on reducing their operating cost with a lower cost fuel, but also the biggest impact on reducing that greenhouse gas or the air burden of NOx and particulate matter. So lots of really great opportunities going on in the marketplace and in the industry.
Talk about costs for a second. So when you talk about trucks that run a lot of miles per day, kind of any guidance on how much their routes have to be in terms of compensating for the additional price premium of CNG over diesel?
Yeah, that's a tough one because it's a lot of times when we look at miles and fleets that are running high mileage, 100,000 miles or so, but it's more than that. You can be a much lower mile per day or per year type of fleet, but you just burn a lot of fuel, right? You're in an application that heavy hauler, at 140,000 pounds, you burn a lot more fuel than at 80,000 pounds. So you don't have to run as many miles to burn the same amount of fuel. And so you have to look at that. There's also applications that are, I'm trying to think of like an application like a really poor aerodynamic rig. It's really bad diesel fuel mileage too. Maybe it's a car hauler, right? Those things really are not very aerodynamic. They're doing a really great service, but they burn a lot of fuel. And so you always have to just look at what's your fuel burn and then look at how that savings might occur, right? And that delta could be $4 between diesel to natural gas. It could be $3. And you start seeing those economics really, really amplifying especially with the environment that we're in right now. But even back when diesel was cheap, if you can remember way back to like February, the economics worked for you. It just works really well for you now.
On that point, David, do you expect that the 15N is going to open up a new organic growth for fleets where it maybe hadn't occurred so far?
Definitely. We have fleets today that have not been traditional natural gas fleets. There are some fleets that probably come to mind that are, very much heavily into natural gas with the products we've had historically, L9Ns, ISX12N. But now we've got fleets, one transitioning from 12s to 15s, because that's kind of the right transition point. But also fleets that have not been natural gas at all, or maybe they dabbled, right? They tried a couple of 12 liters. Maybe it didn't work for them because they needed more than 400 horsepower, 1450 foot-pounds, or something like that. But now we've got that capability. So we're getting second looks and third looks from lots of customers. And so that's pretty exciting. All right, we want to have a product that our traditional customers can move to and are excited about, but also, to really grow the industry, we had to have a product that brought new people into the tent. And that's really what's happening right now.
Question came in, David. How would you compare CNG fuel delivery compared to high pressure diesel injection regarding initial cost and maintenance cost?
So the truck level price is higher for natural gas. There's a premium on that chassis. The fuel delivery system is very high tech as compared to a diesel fuel tank system. Think about an aluminum drum with a couple drop tubes in it versus carbon fiber CNG tanks with a control system and pressure regulation. It's pretty high tech, and so there's definitely all the technology brings a premium to that. And that's where you offset that premium on the front end with the lower cost of operation with the fuel. The maintenance cost is higher on natural gas engines. We've done a lot to basically get to very close to diesel like oil change intervals and other maintenance filter changes. The one thing you do have that the diesel doesn't have, and that's the spark plugs. So you've got a cost of changing spark plugs at, depending on your duty cycle, somewhere in the 50 to 60,000 mile range. But we have done work to time that with where you should be changing your oil. So we try to reduce that downtime and only have that 1 hour of maintenance to do an replacement of spark plugs. So a little bit higher, not extreme, but well washed out by the lower cost of fuel operation.
But does that include a comparison between, or at least has Cummins looked at a comparison between that total cost of ownership and total cost of ownership for Class 8 electric vehicles?
That's a big mystery, right? There's just not enough real data probably to compare to battery electric or battery electric trucks. You definitely don't have some of the maintenances that a diesel or natural gas truck have, but there are some others that they do have. And then the cost of fuel is a big, well, the premium upfront cost of the battery electric truck often subsidized, so it's hard to get exactly what that is, but we believe it to be probably pretty high. And then the cost of energy, the electricity for those trucks, really is kind of murky to see what's it really going to be long term. I think there's a lot of competing demands for that electricity, and then just getting the infrastructure to do that charging is challenging and time consuming to really get there. But encourage everyone to look into that, and if that's of their interest, and see what that is. But I know there are some challenges to do that.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because every year for the last several years, San Diego Gas and Electric, PG&E, and SoCal Gas have joined on a webinar to talk to fleet owners in California about what it takes and what it looks like to convert to a fleet, or specifically targeted for a Class 8 fleet, to run electric vehicles. And I've always thought that, it's great that they're out there trying to help, but the answer is, if you have a fleet of 5 or more trucks, you're looking at a 2 to 3 year lead time to get the infrastructure in place, get the charging in place on site. And I think that one of your points as well, there's a lot more transparency in what it goes into for cost of ownership and fueling and on-site fueling for CNG and diesel than there is for electric vehicles right now. So I think one of the things that a lot of these companies are looking at is, when you talk about fuel prices, they're going to say, well, it's a much more expensive truck to go electric, but wouldn't I save on the long term for electric? Well, I think the answer is it's hard to really say for sure.
Yeah. And we've just got, from a natural gas perspective, we have fleets with, 11,000, 10,000, 14,000 trucks running. So there's real world data out there, and they're making it work both economically and just from doing it at scale, right? And that's one of the things you can do today with natural gas vehicles, is you can deploy those at scale. And really, it's pretty familiar technology. Everybody knows how to, I say everybody, but right, truck shops know how to work on 90+% of a CNG vehicle, and then they just need the training on the additional bits, right? The spark ignited part, and that's really not that foreign of because of passenger car familiarity, or for the CNG system on the vehicle, or LNG. Right, there's a little bit more to know there, but again, it's available and very deployable.
So that has been the question we've run into, is what is the gap between people who are familiar with working on diesel trucks versus CNG trucks, and how much of a learning gap is there?
Yeah, I would say there's really not that much. We've got virtual college training that's available to take you to that next level. The tooling's not that much different because of our Helm platform, where we're staying with a platform that then can be tailored for different fuel types as we produce the product. There is, from a shop perspective, there are some, if you're going to work on the natural gas vehicle inside, there are some special things you need to do, whether it's methane detection inside the building or ventilation or, heat sources, spark sources in the building. So those are nuances that need to be considered for a maintenance facility. If you're going to do it yourself in your shop, you could use the dealer or a Cummins facility to do that work for you, who's already made that investment. Maybe that's your first step as a fleet on your transition. You get fuel in the wild. At public stations, you can outsource some of your maintenance while you work to do more scale, do the work inside your facility, get on-site fueling. Really a great lever to pull your fuel price down even further by you control the dispensing of the fuel. So lots of opportunities there.
We did have a question that also came in about what can the RNG producer industry do to continue to grow U.S. CNG demand? That was an interesting question, and I think you might have an opportunity to talk about some of the groups that you've already connected with in that space.
Yeah, we have fuel producers that are using our engine in our truck partners' vehicles to haul organic matter into a digester or to haul milk from the dairies out to the facilities to process that milk. Those are examples. We have customers that are working to haul natural gas, like tube trailers, out to data centers or out to frac units. If you touch fuel or are in the industry of making the fuel, there's a great opportunity to use the product and use the fuel you make or you have a bit of a touch point on.
What's the lead time on the X15 15-liter product these days?
Our lead time's very short. We're building at scale. It really comes down to what the truck OEM's lead time is to get a build slot. And so, I know there are orders going in every day, and some of those are building out this summer or late this year. It kind of all depends on when the customer wants the truck, and then working with the OEM to when they have build slots out there. So, it's very easy to get. It's not a long lead time, but, I think, doing all the work to make sure you've got fuel for when that truck arrives, you're tooled and trained for when that truck arrives to make sure you're maintaining it and taking good care of it, and then do the right driver training, what to expect when you're expecting a natural gas truck to arrive.
Drew, going back to that previous question that was almost for the whole team here, what can the RNG producer industry do to continue to grow U.S. CNG demand? We've got to get on our game with the RIN creation story, right? Because CNG will be compressed at, say, $10 an MMBTU, and RNG is going to be compressed at $25 an MMBTU. So explaining away that 2.5x price difference between RNG and CNG, you're making a RIN. Okay, we make a RIN. What do we do with that RIN? So I think some of these self-fueling stations could be on the smaller side for being able to sell their own RIN by themselves. So the overall economic model, I think we're still working on, but that's not necessarily a Cummins specific question. Today's the Cummins show. So stay tuned for the rest of June to Biogas TV, because we're going to go through the whole RNG vehicle fuel value proposition for the month of June. So keep joining us for the month.
I mean, certainly the early adopters on going to CNG vehicles, I'm thinking of, the waste hauling fleets in California, have had nothing but benefits from it. So we can just continue to tell that story, right?
Right.
David, I do have a question in terms of application. Are you seeing or aware of any kind of, outside of truck application for the X15N? For example, is rail able to use these motors?
I am going to say the X15N right now is automotive only, and that is the sort of my purview of that. I have had a few people ask me about ag applications and power generation. It's outside my wheelhouse, so I always turn them over to somebody else within Cummins on that business case opportunity. So right
Question
now,
came
no,
in.
it's not available.
Gotcha.
Question came in on the rough cost difference on a new diesel truck to a new CNG truck.
I'm going to say you really need to talk to a dealer and make sure, right? It's so much dependent on your spec of your vehicle. One of the tips and tricks is to keep that premium at a minimum. Is make sure you don't overbuy your fuel delivery system. That's what we call the CNG storage system on vehicle, because that can be a pretty big decision you make. It's not very expensive in the big scheme of things to add an extra 100 gallons of diesel fuel on your truck. It's a pretty big deal to add a whole lot of CNG you don't need. So really going through that, we have a tool now available or will be available this month to help fleets spec their fuel delivery system, storage system for the vehicle so they don't overbuy. And because there's always this, fear of range anxiety. And so we're trying to help customers get familiar with like how to calculate this and not to fear it. Back to the NACV data I was talking about early, the run on less, that the UPS truck ran almost 700 miles every day on one tank of fuel. And so, the range is there. It could have gone further at the fuel economy that it was running. But yeah. And one real quick thing back to the question about power generation is Cummins does have natural gas engines of other displacements that do natural gas. So, our 78 liters are really big player, particularly in data centers and whether it's prime or standby power for anybody. So we have other products, just not the 15 liter right now that's in the power gen space.
Last question we've got here came in, said, are you servicing any programs in construction vehicles or in ag vehicles with your products, with your natural gas product?
Not with the on-highway products that I serve. We do have stationary power products, natural gas. I mentioned power generation. I know we have some for the oil and gas industry, again for stationary power, and for ag, like in irrigation systems. Think of maybe a rice paddy or a cotton field where you might be not have electric irrigation pumps. You may use natural gas.
How is an on-highway engine different from an off-highway engine?
So the on-highway one is there's a regulatory difference, the regulations for the emissions that the engine has to meet or the engine system. But also there's just performance differences for, the transient response needs of an on-highway engine versus a stationary engine that may be a fixed speed or a hydraulic drive off-highway piece of equipment, or a generator that's a single speed 1800 RPM type of application. So with a vehicle, you've got to be able to transition from idle to maximum engine speed and no load to full load very quickly. So lots of different tuning, both for performance and for the emission requirements that the government has us meet.
Okay. Well, wonderful. We're at time here. So, David, thank you so kindly for your time and your knowledge and wisdom here from Cummins. And so you've got David's contact david.j.king@cummins.com. So thanks for hanging out with us biogas folks for a piece of your day, David. We appreciate it.
This is great. I always like talking about natural gas. If anybody who knows me, they know that. So thanks for having me. This has been great.
You're welcome. So we wrap our show with Drew and the offtake roundup due to the critical importance of offtake these days. So what you got for us today, Drew?
Yeah, so as of live this morning, LCFS prices have finally pushed solidly past $70. We're at $71.50 for prompt LCFS, and D3 RINs up to 262. Now, hopefully that'll support some offtake pricing for short and long-term offtake. We've had a lot of uncertainty in the last several years. But one of the things that we are seeing an interest in is RTCs. There is definitely some new demand for RTCs in the market right now. Seeing a couple of RFPs come out, more corporate buyers coming into the space. Still a lot of conversation around things like IMO and international markets. I'm still somewhat skeptical on the timeline on those. I still think it's kind of more like a 2029, 2030 conversation. But there's definitely more demand in general, and that's very helpful. And the other thing that I was going to point out is that we do now have, I've talked about this before, the creativity in the offtake. We do have more buyers that are open to creative offtake solutions where either structuring a contract with a floor price or some flexibility in how pricing is achieved or upside with sharing on credit values. There's a lot of opportunities in that space that we kind of just come together and brainstorm on what might make something happen, what might get something done. I think that's the key to the conversation. And we've got several buyers that are looking to say, look, if you have a project coming online and you're only going to be able to get RTCs off the gas that's being injected for the first 3 months or so as you're going into generating RINs or LCFS credits, we'd love to talk. We'd love to see if we can help monetize those credits. Credit value right now is still fairly depressed. We've still seen RTC pricing around $13, but there may be some new strategies in the market to approach that with.
Cool. Good. Thanks, Drew. Okay. Thanks for all the guests that joined us today. Stay tuned next week for episode 2 in our series on RNG for vehicle fuels. And with that, we'll wish everybody a great week.